The technology landscape over the past, say, 40 years has largely been dominated by American big tech. Now, these American companies did not emerge in a vacuum. So, if you actually look back in the history, you'll find that what we think of today as Silicon Valley, which is the home of very wealthy technology oligarchs and entrepreneurs, was actually the research and development hotbed linked directly to the Pentagon, Department of Defense, and assorted contractors around the military industrial complex in the 1950s and 1960s. So, American big tech has always been intimately intertwined with the interests, the financial sinews of the American military industrial complex. The United States has, over the course of the last roughly 20 to 25 years, increasingly weaponized its control over the technology infrastructure. It began to do that explicitly in the early 2000s after 9/11, when the apparatuses of state firstly intervened and successfully compelled SWIFT to provide data on Iraqi financial transactions, and eventually SWIFT acceded to American state demands to intervene in those transactions, a few years later. So we have seen the politicization of data that has traversed the American geography. Now, the reason I say geography is because the reason that the institutions of state could intervene is because the data centers that held this data is actually located in Virginia. And it was on that basis that the American government and the departments of the American government successfully argued that they had jurisdiction over not just the physical environment, but the data itself. All of this technology stack is now coming under challenge. The monopoly that the United States technology industry has had over core technology hardware in terms of fiber optic cables, undersea cables, satellite technologies that enable the transmission of data through the sky, all the way through to routers and data centers. That monopoly is now slowly but surely fading away. That's not to say that the infrastructure owned by American big technology companies isn't significant in the world. It's simply to say that it no longer occupies the monopoly position, or increasingly the loss of monopoly position is becoming evident. One of the most interesting parts of all of this is the growing role of open source technologies, generally speaking. And the most recent example of that is DeepSeek. And DeepSeek is an artificial intelligence model that was developed in China by a Chinese company that then subsequently released that model as an open source model with no limitations. What that means is that anybody in the world with the know-how and access to some basic computing technology can actually download and run their own version of that model and then build applications on top of that. The lack of restrictions meant that there are no commercial restrictions either. So anybody can build commercial applications as well using the DeepSeek based model. Now, what that will do is fundamentally transform the power structures in global technology. Add to that the diversification in things such as satellites or low orbit satellites, the proliferation of undersea cables that are no longer controlled by American companies, and the development of data centers in many other locations of the world operating technology hardware that has been built using Chinese technology and technologies from various parts of the world, really means that we are entering into an era of what I've called Digital Westphalia. So it's the idea that countries can develop technology ecosystems that emphasize data sovereignty, but at the same time enable them to continue to interact with other data ecologies. This is a fundamental shift from a world where a small handful of American big tech companies basically controlled the environment in which data was created, stored, and transported.